Look, I'm just gonna be myself.
Peter, no one wants that.
With Spider-Man Far From Home recently hitting theatres, debate has been sparked over if Far From Home is the best Spidey movie yet. We've decided to look back and compare the two most well-known live-action versions of Spider-Man, Tom Holland and Tobey Maguire. These Spider-Men are drastically different in many ways, interpreted from various comic books to create a faithful adaptation on the big screen. These movies explore an array of themes and ideas through the character of Spider-Man. Both versions of Spider-Man are represented differently through their character arcs, Peter Parker and Spider-Man, and emotional weight.
Let's start with Tobey Maguire. The character arc of this Spider-Man is very much the classic Steve Ditko era of Spider-Man. Taking his powers for granted, high school student Peter Parker discovers the most important lesson of his life when he loses his uncle when not acting responsibly. Realizing his duties as a superhero, Peter must live by his uncle's motto and step up to become a true hero. Peter is struggling to balance his responsibilities as Spider-Man and his civilian life as Peter Parker. Carrying the burden of his responsibilities caused by the grief of Uncle Ben's death, Peter must deal with the consequences around him. His best friend Harry Osborn is angry with him because he believes Spider-Man killed his dad. He can't be there for Mary Jane because of his duties as being Spider-Man, and he has to deal with Aunt May's loneliness because Ben is dead. Balancing his jobs, college, and his responsibility as a superhero, Peter learns that with great power there must also come great responsibility. These movies explore the fundamental arc of Spider-Man and lay the foundation for this character.
However, Tom Holland's Spider-Man takes a different direction and decides to explore the aftermath of Ben's death. Approached by Tony Stark and recruited by the Avengers, Peter Parker's sole ambitions lie in his life as Spider-Man. This is quite the opposite of the Raimi trilogy, specifically Spider-Man 2, as Peter Parker actively wants to be Spider-Man. This is also present in the Steve Ditko run on Spider-Man. However, unlike Tobey Maguire, Holland's films are much more villain-orientated, focusing on Spider-Man and the plot of the bad guy. This Spider-Man is heavily based off the Ultimate Comics all-new Spider-Man series. Taking cues from Miles Morales, this character arc is not often associated with Peter Parker. After the death of his Uncle Ben, Peter Parker meets his childhood hero Tony Stark and tries to fulfill his destiny as an Avenger. After Peter fights alongside the Avengers in Civil War, he is wanting to take on bigger challenges and step up as Spider-Man.
However, Spider-Man Homecoming explores this idea by having Tony Stark not wanting Peter to be involved in his business. Peter, however, disobeys Iron Man and continues to pursue the Vulture. After being accepted into the Avengers, Peter declines Tony's offer, saying he just wants to be a friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, although he only did that to impress Iron Man.
That was a test, right?
We're pretty sure you know the rest. He gets the suit he declined, gets the Avengers membership he declined, dies, comes back, and repeats his arc in Far From Home. Far From Home re-explores Peter's involvement with Iron Man and the consequences as a result of Tony Stark. Both movies and both villains are the direct results of Iron Man's actions.
This Spider-Man arc takes a 360 degrees rotation and lands right back to where it finished in Homecoming. In our opinion, Tom Holland's character arc didn't need to be repeated, having already been concluded in Homecoming. Also, the arc was much better represented in Homecoming than Far From Home. Not to mention how in the movie they destroyed their own message by playing AC/DC when Peter was creating his own suit using Stark technology, exactly the way that Tony did. They didn't even stick with their own message.
Both Spider-Man transition through different character arcs, having taken place during different stages of Peter Parker's life. Tobey Maguire explored Ben's death, the balance of his dual identity, and the burden of responsibility, and how he matured and overcame these obstacles. Tom Holland dealt with the aftermath of Ben's death and the complications of becoming an Avengers-status superhero.
Tobey's incarnation captures the mild-mannered Peter Parker from the original comics and the Steve Ditko adaptation of Spider-Man. Tom Holland, on the other hand, portrays a more modern interpretation of Peter Parker and the more energetic, fun-loving Spider-Man. Both Peter Parkers are science nerds and experience trauma in their lives. However, Maguire deals with the emotional weight much more thoroughly. Tobey's Peter Parker suffers the effects of guilt and suppresses his powers and duties as Spider-Man, desiring a normal life.
Tom Holland is willing to put his life on the line as Peter Parker to fulfill his duties as Spider-Man, tired of being an ordinary teenager. Holland's Peter Parker does suffer guilt but rarely seems affected by it. After losing his mentor Iron Man, Peter is grieving but dismisses this to go on vacation. an interpretation of grief not associated with the Spider-Man character. Spider-Man is the embodiment of grief and suffering, and these films do not show that. He leaves his city, which he has a responsibility to, basically defying friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. The grief is brought back throughout the movie in specific scenes, but there is not much emotional depth compared to Tobey Maguire.
Holland's Spider-Man is dependent on his father figure Iron Man, seeking approval and respect from him. Iron Man appears to be the main catalyst of Peter's Spider-Man career and the most influential factor of his responsibility. However, before Tony Stark, Peter donned his red and blue sweatsuit, protecting the little guy of New York. The sweatsuit is a reminder of Uncle Ben and Peter's responsibilities to him. This is shown through Peter disobeying Tony Stark's orders.
After Tony recruits Peter, his ambitions as a superhero increase, risking his civilian life to fulfill his superhero identity. Before Iron Man, Peter was like this.
Yeah, just looking out for the little guy.
However, now he believes he was destined for more than just a friendly neighborhood Spider-Man.
This Spider-Man is trying to be a hero to his friends, to the school, to the Avengers, and results in being a hero to nobody. However, Far From Home repeats Spider-Man's development and allows Peter to get what he wants without having to work for it. He inherits Tony's glasses, gets to go on vacation, have a supportive aunt, and be with the girl he likes.
As you can tell, we're not exactly happy that Far From Home reversed Spider-Man's development from Homecoming and interpreted it within a different story. In this movie, he was handed everything and is willing to give it all up to enjoy his school vacation. At least in Homecoming, Peter worked for his desires by pursuing the Vulture and successfully capturing him, whereas in this film, he doesn't work for his goals. Coincidentally, MJ also has a crush on Peter, just as he had a crush on her. Aunt May is 100% supportive of Peter risking his life as a superhero. Remember when Peter said this?
Boy, you know what she's like. If she finds out people try and kill me every single night, she's not gonna let me do this anymore. That was so good.
It's quite frustrating how inconsistent the MCU Spider-Man is. He was great in Civil War, changed in Homecoming, great in Infinity War, murdered people in Endgame, and repeated his arc in Spider-Man Far From Home. Whereas the Raimi trilogy leapt off the pages of the comic books, Tom Holland's cinematic appearances feel more like the audience is reading a comic book. Spider-Man Homecoming is placed in a large universe and deals with the consequences of the events within that universe. The numerous appearances of the Marvel characters feel forced rather than natural like in the comics.
We recommend you read the Spider-Man Far From Home prelude comic book, which basically is a full Spider-Man Homecoming movie, as the events feel better connected as they flow and the appearances don't feel forced. The MCU has such an episodic structure built up like a comic book series, whereas Tobey Maguire contains consistent films and a progressing story. Even the cameos in the trilogy feel natural and are not the central focus of the current scene they appear in.
Like before, we stated Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man and Peter Parker endure many hardships, mainly money struggles.
Rent!
Unlike Tom Holland, who can afford an overseas school trip, a lot of backpacks, and has the aid of a billionaire. Not to mention how nearly everyone Peter knows is aware of his identity, and now the whole world does too. Spider-Man's secret identity is much more important than how they portray it in Far From Home. Peter wouldn't let anyone know of his identity, as it would endanger them and everyone around Peter.
Tom Holland's movies lack the consequence of this, as well as many other issues his characters would face. Even Flash Thompson can't get under Peter Parker's skin, something he should be exceptionally good at. Aunt May lost Ben 6 months ago, and she was already flirting with Tony Stark.
Most so-called humour within these films is not associated with Spider-Man. Like the scene in Far From Home, where Peter calls a drone strike on Brad because he's going to show MJ a photo of Peter with his pants off. Not to mention how he's very irresponsible, almost killing his classmates as he used Tony's glasses to call the drone strike. Where is his sense of responsibility that was present in Civil War, Homecoming, and Infinity War?
In our opinion, Far From Home made decisions that ruined his character. They had a lot of potential to rectify the problems in Homecoming, but completely redid the message of that film, just within a different setting.
People said they didn't want to see another origin story, but Far From Home was the complete origin story for this version of Spider-Man. Just think about it. A father figure dies who was an inspiration for Peter, who taught him how to be a hero. His death teaches him a lesson that he will carry for the rest of his life.
The origin story didn't need to be retold with Iron Man because it was already referenced in Civil War. All they did was switch out Uncle Ben with Tony Stark. What's the point of already establishing Ben's death if it didn't teach Peter anything? Why is it that Spider-Man in his red and blue sweatsuit helping the little guy with the weight of responsibility if Far From Home has a need to retell that story?
About that. Ben Parker was Peter's uncle and taught him a strict moral code and the sense of responsibility. He taught him how to be compassionate, strong-minded, and to always get back up. This Spider-Man is not compassionate. He just stares at Mysterio while he is dying, and seemingly doesn't appear to be affected that he's indirectly responsible for his death. He saved the Vulture, but yet lets Mysterio die without any attempts at saving him. Even with the Vulture, he refused to sympathise with his perspectives, something that even the audience of the film can do. That warehouse conversation scene is Vulture's explanation for why he does what he does. However, Peter says,
Why are you telling me this?
In the Raimi trilogy, Peter sympathized and tried to save his enemies from their insanity. Sure, each one of them dies, but he's not directly responsible for each of their deaths. Spider-Man is a hero. He's meant to save everyone, including the villains. In Far From Home, Peter doesn't even act like a hero, even telling Nick Fury to find another superhero to save the world. Oh yeah, that reminds us, whatever happened to this?
Friendly neighborhood Spider-Man.
If he's so friendly neighborhood, then why does he need to save the planet on every single superhero occasion? Homecoming established that Peter Parker was not like Tony Stark, and he's not meant to save the planet as a superhero, and is meant to stay close to the ground.
Far From Home destroys the ideas and themes Homecoming built up, and reconstructs them but never completes them. Furthermore, in Civil War, Spider-Man should have been influenced by Tony Stark and Captain America. They should have made Peter start out on Iron Man's team, as he is his childhood hero, and then have Peter turn to Captain America as he realizes Tony's wrongdoings. This makes Spider-Man biased to Tony Stark, ignoring his faults and flaws. This isn't Spider-Man, and he is not the most comic accurate Spider-Man to 616 or Ultimate Peter Parker. He is to Miles, but not to Peter.
When people say that Tom Holland is the most comic accurate Spider-Man, and someone provides evidence from the source material to prove otherwise, their instant rebuttal is, comic accuracy doesn't matter, it's a new take. You can't create a new take without keeping true to the source material which that character is in. It's like if movies come out where they make Superman kill his enemies, or if Batman becomes a murderer, or if Spider-Man starts massacring his opponents. Oh, wait.
Tobey's Spider-Man was an independent superhero who tried to do what's right with a huge sense of responsibility resting upon his shoulders. Tom Holland's Spider-Man is a sidekick to Tony Stark and a plot device to tell the audience about Iron Man's legacy.
This Spider-Man had a chance in Far From Home, but so many stories were trying to be told that this movie ultimately destroyed the image of this character. This misrepresents everything Spider-Man stands for. This franchise treats Spider-Man as a tool for comedy instead of a legend. The Raimi trilogy and the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man is a beautiful series which captures everything which Spider-Man stands for and redefined the superhero genre as a whole.
I'm starting to think you're not the Avengers! Here's your change!